The late, great author William Murray used to always say after a losing day at the track, there's always fresh. Meaning tomorrow is a new day with new possibilities and new races to play. As horse players, we suffer through a lot of losing days, but the reason we keep coming back is because we know there's always a chance we can make a life-changing score. Today's guest experienced that feeling when he walked out of Del Mar on Saturday night after the Breeders' Cup with more than $250,000. That's right, $250,000. That's what we live for. And that's why we suffer DQs, losing photo finishes, rough trips, and everything else the racing gods throw at us. One big score. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the penultimate edition of Best Bet for the Bing Crosby season at Del Mar. I'm your host, Frank Scatoni, and I am chomping at the bit to talk to today's guest. But before we begin, I say this every week in case we have a lot of new viewers out there. This is not a traditional selection show. We are not going to go over all the races. We are just going to look at specific races and wagering strategies that offer the best opportunities to make a decent score. If you're watching live, feel free to leave us a comment or ask us any questions. The show will also be archived on Del Mar's Twitter and YouTube platforms. I also want to remind everyone that there is an $88,000 Pick 6 carryover today. Lucky for you, we are going to talk about race 9, the payout leg. See if we can help you out a little bit in that race. You got to get involved. It's one of those rare opportunities where horse players actually have an edge. There's also a super high 5 carryover of $23,000. So again, today, big opportunities. All right, let's get down to business. Today's guest has done this show a few times before, and the reason I keep inviting him back is because he's made us a lot of money. In fact, my biggest day of the summer meet came from piggybacking his bets on this show. So, backed by popular demand, you're welcome, Jim. Keep emailing me. I do read emails, and I listen to my audience. The third place finisher of this year's Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, winner of more than $250,000, one of the best and brightest, smartest players I know, Tyler Hoffman. Tyler, what is good?
Frank, thank you so much for having me back. It's an honor.
I'm so proud of you, man. I know you work so hard and you love this game. Congratulations. You hit the kind of score that all horse players dream of. We're going to talk about the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge and your big score in a bit. But, you know, we talked a little bit about this before the show. I want to talk about the younger generation of horse players. I've been really encouraged and enthused by some really sharp, young, enthusiastic players out there. Guys like Ryan Anderson, Jackson Muniz, Noah Maher, Kyle Roscoe. Really, really good, smart players who are going to carry the torch. But think about it. Just a couple of years ago, you were part of that younger generation. There's now a younger generation before you. You were friends with a guy named Matt Dinnerman who just happened to go off and become a race caller for Oaklawn Park and Monmouth Park. Carlos Ortega, you guys had a little blog going, Three Colts Handicap. He's done my on-track show before. He's a local horse player in San Diego. He's smart. He's there. He does the work. Let me ask you, do you think it was kind of important in your development as a horse player to kind of have like-minded friends to just, kind of suffer through the growing pains together?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the sport is so challenging to learn. Obviously, the handicapping puzzle itself would take a year to explain to somebody the old school method. This is pre-using of programs which have become so popular amongst horse players today and have probably simplified the game in ways for the better, if we're being perfectly honest, just to get more engagement and fan engagement, both at the wagering and, wanting to come out to the track and experience what all of us that have grown up in the sport have come to love and will love until the day we no longer are on this earth. Right. So I think being able to make friends with people at the track that were of the similar age certainly had a positive impact. And it's fun to come across somebody that has such a unique hobby like horse racing is, because let's be honest, you don't have a lot of friends in school that, even know what horse racing is. Everybody that finds themselves in this game is either through a family member or through that one friend, which leads you to meeting other friends. So that whole aspect has been really fun. And some of my closest friends at the racetrack are around my age group and stuff. And it's been fun to know each other now for, the better part of 2 decades, essentially.
Yeah. I was very lucky when I was cutting my teeth back in New York. I had some older guys who have been around the track a long time. When I came out to California. I mentioned William Murray. He kind of mentored me. But at the same time, I don't know if I would have gotten as hooked and excited about the sport if it wasn't for my buddy Pete Fornatale. Like we loved it together, and we were able to build on that and share it. And like you, we met other people of our generation. This is going back a long time ago, like 25 years. But that kind of got me excited because it also, we learned together. We could talk through things, and more importantly, it felt like you had like a bond or a kinship.
I think you're absolutely correct in that. And one of the things that cannot be understated enough is that when you're handicapping a card and it's going through, like today's Delmar card, for instance, it's really, really helpful to bounce ideas off of another person, just to talk it through. You may have somebody mention something to you that you really hadn't considered, or the possibility of a race set up, and you go, you know what? I wasn't thinking about it right. That makes a lot of sense. I hadn't considered that point of view before. And now it completely changes your thinking. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it'll screw you up, and then you're going, man, I wish I hadn't talked to such and such. They talked me on that thing. But hopefully you're good enough friends you can overcome when those types of things happen. But being able to discuss a race and to really, really set up a race and set up what you're thinking, what are trainer intentions? What's the jockey switch mean? Why is there an equipment change? All of those things I think are really, really valuable. And that's half the fun of going out to the track and interacting with people and getting to experience the sport that we all love.
If you had to give like one piece of advice to some of the younger players who want to get more serious about it, graduate from the kind of weekend warrior type play to maybe playing every day, targeting specific bets, maybe getting more involved in tournaments, what kind of advice would you give them?
There's so much different pieces of advice I'd probably give. But I guess if I had to list off three things right off the top of my head, the first thing is, I think because of how competitive the sport is and how much of an edge the CAWs have, the computer assisted wagering groups have, you got to have a program of some kind. It just helps balance you out a little bit. It really does help narrow down the fields to contenders versus the pretenders. And let's kind of analyze the information from that perspective. I still think that the old school pen and paper handicapping is valuable. It's still worth something, but you got to have something along those lines to keep up with the edge that these larger bettors have. The second thing that I would highly recommend getting involved in is tournament play. The sheer fact of the prize pool in tournaments, to me, that is the edge that the players have. When we talk more about the BCBC story, I made more money in prize money than I did gambling. And that's a huge deal. That's the reason you participate in a tournament like that. And you can't get that edge anywhere else. You play in the pick 6 or pick 5 pool, or just any type of cash betting, whatever you bet and you win, that's great. But there's nothing on top of it. There's no extra oomph to it. And so I think that is a huge, huge edge, and something that I would highly encourage everybody to get involved in. And there's so many different ways to get involved in tournament play. There are live money tournaments, there are mythical tournaments. You can find a format that you really, really like. And you can succeed with. And it also goes into our conversation topic about meeting people. The tournament world is very, very friendly. There are people that will sit at the exact same table with the exact same friends that they've made from their very first tournament. Those friendships last the entirety of a horse player's career. And so it's a great way to build camaraderie. It's a great way to learn more about the game. It's a great way to share ideas and handicapping, critiques with one another. And it's a great way to make more, extra money on top of the day-to-day wagering. So those are kind of the top two things I would recommend. And then the third thing would be just keep the betting simple. You want to be a successful horse player, don't overcomplicate it. Whatever it is that you think you're good at. If you're not a trifecta player, don't play trifectas. If you're an exact and a double player, focus on those bets. If you're just concerned on picking winners, then just focus on the win bets. Whatever it is that makes you successful, keep it simple, follow what helps you out, and grind away that way.
I love it. That gives some of the younger players a real foundation to build upon. You mentioned the Breeders' Cup betting challenge. You were part of the BCBC Diaries through the Breeders' Cup and in the Money Media, kind of documenting your quest to qualify for the Breeders' Cup. You went along with a couple of other guys. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how important it is for you to play in a tournament like the Breeders' Cup betting challenge? Yeah,
so to touch upon it, the Breeders' Cup betting challenge diaries was surrounded. It was myself, Justin Mastari, and Jackson Munoz, and the three of us had an opportunity to basically get interviewed by Peter Thomas Fornatale almost on a weekly basis. We kind of took different turns and just kind of documented different tournaments we were playing and how those went first and foremost, and also maybe our thought process and our betting strategies and what we were trying to accomplish through those tournaments. Obviously, the goal was to qualify for it, and I was fortunate enough to do so fairly early on in the Haskell tournament at Monmouth, and was able to win my way into the Breeders' Cup tournament. And it was a really fun experience, not only because I know those guys, and Jackson I got to know a little bit better, and Justin and I have been friends for a long time. So it was, again, another camaraderie building thing that was fun to do every couple of weeks. And it was fun to kind of challenge and push each other, because, you wanted to be the first to qualify,
right.
And, which fortunately I was. So I got a little bit of bragging rights, over the group to start with, but you're also rooting for each other in the tournaments. And then fast forwarding to the actual Breeders' Cup tournament itself, that is the richest cash tournament in North America. So you want to be in it. You want to give yourself a shot to do it, to have a payday and a score like I was fortunate enough to have this year. And even more so, you want to be able to win your way in with the track's money. You really don't want to have to pony up the $10,000, the $2,500 entry fee and the $7,500 to play, if you can avoid it. And I was fortunate enough to qualify in a heck of a lot cheaper than the $10,000 entry, which again made it an even better, EV positive play for me.
Right. So let's talk about that. Let's segue a little bit. You started with a $7,500 bankroll. You turned it into, I believe, more than 110,000, right? And that was good enough to finish third. You prize money on top of that. I'm very curious. Kind of give us a little walk through those 2 days. But more importantly, how about the day before? When you were looking at the form, you're like, I'm building my day around this horse. There's a lot of strategy involved when it comes to these tournaments. You have to really pick and choose your spots, but you also have to do mandatory bets. You're a little handcuffed, especially in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge. 3 of 5 Breeders' Cup races the first day, 7 of 9 the second day. That's a lot. You have to bet 600 in each race to meet your minimums. So there's a lot of game theory going on. Just tell us how it all happened.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've played in this tournament so many times, and I'd never had any success in it. My dad had actually had probably the most successful run, and that was over a decade ago. And the tournament had grown so much more so than what it was back then, just from a participation standpoint.
I think they were like over 500 entries or something, right? It was crazy. 585
was a record again this year. It's gone up every single year, and with the more participants that are in it, obviously the more challenging it is to crack your way into the into the money. So I had a pretty good feel about how to succeed in the tournament. I just had never been able to implement a successful strategy. I mean, you're basically playing to different tiers, if you will. The goal on Friday to me was always to at least double up on the original bankroll. You basically want to increase your minimum play from the $600 that you're forced to play in 3 of those 5 races on Friday and 7 of the 9 on Saturday, and now bet bigger denominations. Once you're betting bigger denominations, whether it be $1,000 a race, $2,000 race, or $5,000, whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. The point is now you're always one more hit away from getting to the next tier. So the way that I took it is I just tried to break it down and keep it very, very simple. And again, everything gets a lot easier in this tournament if you're able to hit early. It's like a football team taking the opening drive down the field for a touchdown, or a basketball team going on a 10-0 run to start the game. Everything's easier when
I would have felt really good if gaming had won on Friday. Really, really good. I built my whole tournament around that horse, but that's another story for another day.
Citizen Bowl, unfortunately. So I was fortunate enough that the first bet I made on Friday, I liked a Euro, and I was able to hit Magnum Force in the juvenile turf sprint and a $200 double to immersive.
Nice.
And so right off the bat, I was up 10,000. And so that now opened up everything for me on Saturday. There was nothing more that I needed to accomplish with Friday's card, and I really didn't. I had a couple of different opportunities to increase the bankroll, but wasn't able to finish off some doubles. One of them being the same horse that you like, Frank. But that's a whole different story there, what happened in that race. So when you came into Saturday's race, and this is where I think my thought process had probably changed, and I had learned from previous years, there wasn't really a true horse that I was counting on. I liked horses, but they weren't, until I knew what the value of them was going to be, there wasn't going to be a certain runner that I liked more than another. It was mostly going to be, my position in the tournament and my, where my bankroll stood when that race came up. And so the first kind of aggressive swing I took was obviously, like everybody else, I thought Torpedo Anna and the distaff was a free square. So I just played $1,000 doubles to the 2 Japanese runners in the Breeders' Cup turf, who I thought were really, really strong. I thought Roshan Park was completely forgotten about, and Cherriere. And I knew Rebels Romance was going to be the horse to beat. And unfortunately, Roshan Park lost a really tough ball. You needed one more jump to get there.
Oh my God. Yes,
which would have vaulted me at that point. I was probably sitting at about 15, 16,000. That would have vaulted me over 50. And so while at the time it was a tough beat.
What were you trying to get to at that point? Were you trying to get to 50?
So my goal was, I wanted to get to somewhere in the $40,000 to $60,000 range, because I knew that would be close to probably the cut line for the money. And at that point, I knew that I could swing now to get over six figures to really take a shot to win the tournament.
Did you have a target number in mind?
Yeah, you needed 3 hits in my mind to get there. I mean, some people get there in one hit, but the way that I was kind of strategizing it was more of a tiered method.
Were you trying to get to 150, 125? Like what?
Yeah, I mean, the strategy was really just to get over 100,000, really, because the tournament has evolved so much. I mean, I think the winner, not obviously this year, but the year previous, was like $228,000. And again, when you're starting with a $7,500 bankroll, you really got to crush something.
That's remarkable.
And there are players that are going to bet $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 all in the last race. And I think one of your previous guests, Matt Miller, that was how he proved to be successful in one of his conquests of this tournament. And I'm assuming something that he did very similar in this year's round.
And Drew Coatney bet $97,000 to win on Flightline.
Exactly.
And that's a 2 to 5 shot into a 5 to 2 shot, And it goes exactly with what you've talked about of, what advice to the younger generation stuff. You have to know yourself. I know me personally, if I bet $97,000 to win on a 1 to 2 shot, I'm going to run the horse off the board. Forget the fact that he's not winning the race. I can't physically do that. So I've got to go the other way. I've got to hit a $97,000 bet with, 5 to 10,000, because I'm more of a bet small, win big philosophy than a bet big to double up kind of guy. I would never have the stones to do that. Hitting the repeat button 97 times, 97 times. No way.
It's insane. So going through the turn after the tough beat with Roshan Park there, I still felt good about where it was, because every bet that I had made to that point in the tournament had either won or run second. Really, I was right around there. And you just keep throwing something the wall and hope you're going to connect. And I was fortunate enough to do so in the filly and mare turf. I really like Moira. And Moira was bet down a little bit more than I thought. At one point, I kind of thought of maybe a large win bet on her. But when she was sitting hovering at that 9 to 2, 5 to 1 odds, I said, I think there's more value in the exactas. And so I just spread out a little bit in the exactas, all playing $1,000 one ways, and was fortunate enough to connect with Cinderella's Dream. I think that exact ended up paying about $24. So I got back 24,000 there.
Wow.
Which made my bankroll about 30,000. So now I was more in the fight, and I was happy with my positioning. And at that point, with 3 races to go, we obviously had we had the sprint that was left. We had the turf mile, and then the Breeders' Cup dirt mile.
Dirt mile, yeah.
So all I was trying to do really with those last 3 bets was get myself over 6 figures to take swings. And so I played pretty aggressive doubles, and just kind of rolled them through. The first of which was I like straight no chaser, and so I played $1,000 doubles with straight no chaser, and I thought that the 2 Euros, Notable Speech and Porta Fortuna, were almost locks in the Breeders' Cup turf mile. And I rolled those doubles into the dirt mile to Full Serrano and Post Time, who I liked. Now, unfortunately, when I lost the turf mile, the whole strategy at that point blew up. I was now in no man's land. I probably had given back, I don't know, 8,000 or 9,000, I think, at that point of the, I was at 30. I was probably at about 21,000 with the dirt mile left, and I was dead in everything. And feeling a little bit snake bit at the time, but still knowing that things had gone, fairly well. And we were still going to, I was going to walk out of there with a pretty decent score. And I remember talking to my dad. We had spent a lot of time talking about the dirt mile, and I really liked Post Time, but I couldn't figure out anybody else in the race. And it just felt like one of those things where it's going, man, it's coming from off the pace. It's not really how Delmar runs there. And this is where I'm probably most proud. And I have to give my dad a lot of credit for this. Okay. We went back to old school handicapping there in that race. And it was something he had thought of in the morning. And as the day got on, it made more and more sense. And that was the trip that Full Serrano was going to get. It's a classic old school handicapping play. And, he goes, it's up to you, what you want to do with it and stuff. And how we're going to do it. And at the time I go, if we get over 50,000, that would be a really, really nice hit. Yeah. I said, but I don't know how else to bet the race. And I don't want to throw away $10,000 on a race that I don't love. And this is where the true irony in horse racing comes out, because you never know when you're going to hit. And so it was a really, really simple bet. It was $4,000 to win on Post Time, who I thought was a good value. I think at the time was 8 or 9 to 1. And I put $1,000 exacta box Post Time to Full Serrano.
Wow.
And obviously that connected. It paid $100.
13 to 1, 8 to 1, right?
Yep.
Post Time came flying late, and Full Serrano got the perfect trip that you envisioned. So
it just I threw a bullseye. I threw something at the dartboard and I caught it absolutely square. And again, looking back on it, could I bet 4,000 on a full Serrano and have won the tournament? Sure. Should I bet another $1,500 in the exacta box that also wins the tournament? Yeah. But again, every horse player that plays that tournament has the exact same story and the exact same thing.
That's right.
Again, when you have, as the banner shows right now, you have that kind of a score of a lifetime. I'm certainly not going to complain or apologize for the bet that I made or the strategy that went into it. And was more than happy with the end result in this tournament.
You should feel pretty good about yourself, and I congratulate you, and I'm proud of you. And what just a remarkable day, 2 days for you. We're going to segue into the handicapping part of the show because you have a couple of races picked out. But I do want to bring up something about digging deep and doing the hard work, finding things that the computer players can't quantify. They can't work into their algorithm. Last time you were on the show, you came up with something that absolutely blew my mind, that showed the level of detail and the level of work you put in and how you're trying to find an edge so that you can find value frankly in a marketplace that is very tough to find value these days. Do you remember a horse named Wayne the Brain?
Oh, I do, for trainer Mark Galat.
Can you tell? Do you remember how you came up with the horse? Because I remember it and I think about it every day.
Yeah, so Wayne the Brain, again, coming up with your own notes, whether it be, people always think of when you write notes for horses that they're just trip notes, and that's not necessarily the case. It could be handicapping thoughts that you had, into the race. It could be workout report notes. And in this particular case, Wayne the Brain had run, a fairly even race on debut. I thought it was a little bit better than it appeared on paper. So just naturally had a note that thought the horse would improve second time out. But the real key was the workout report going into the debut was that the horse was working in blinkers and was working very well. The debut effort was not with blinkers, but the second time start, they put the blinkers on. And that was a huge, huge tell that not only was the observations from watching the original debut effort was probably correct, but that this was definitely the money run on second time out. And of course, we got the overlay because Miramati, who has consistently been overbet in his career for Baffert, again, went off a huge favorite. And as we determined, if the blinkers help improve Wayne the Brain's speed and he can get in front of Miramati, who we knew does not like to pass horses, he puts him in chase mode, the race could be over from there. And it makes you look like a genius when it works out like that. And you're fortunate enough to do so.
But that's absolutely incredible to me. Like you had to search for that. You know what I mean? Like, and you had to realize that working with blinkers, debut without blinkers, ran okay, but was working really, really well in blinkers. And then Mark Glatt puts the blinkers on for the second start, got the foundation in the horse, got the experience. Now it's go time. Thank you for that, by the way. That was a really nice score for me. But here, what?
Me as well.
Yeah. I was talking a little bit about how the programs. He's asking if you have a program you use, and if you don't, that's fine. Maybe you can just tell Stephen a little bit about how you handicap.
Yeah, no, the computer program I'd probably recommend right now was created by one of my good friends, Scotty McKeever. Equine Edge has become a pretty popular program, and one that I would definitely recommend to new players. It's very, very easy to use. It's easy to understand. You can go to equineedge.com, and I'm going to make Scotty pay me for this promo. But basically the way that the algorithm breaks down there is there's a ton of different algorithms that you can use. There are first picks, second picks, there are long shot plays. But what I really like about the program is that it gives you pace metrics and it gives you win probability percentage. And both of those I like using in conjunction with my own handicapping because I kind of have my old school way of, I consider myself a pace handicapper. That's how I was taught. I was raised on speed figures and analyzing pace. And so having a program that kind of either confirms what I'm seeing in the form or perhaps disagrees with me, and I go, maybe I need to reevaluate what I'm looking at here, I think is really, really valuable. And so, yeah, that's one I would highly recommend checking out. I think they have a weekend rate that someone can use for 3 days. That's pretty economical. And you can play around with it. There's 1,000 programs out there, but this is one I think is pretty user friendly.
No, that's great. And, it's funny. I do the same thing with Optics EQ. I like to do my traditional handicapping. I like to formulate an opinion of the race. And then I like to use Optics EQ to either, confirm my opinion or maybe give me some ideas in a different direction. So I think, like you said, there's a lot of good stuff out there. It's what your comfort level is. But you still have to have that fundamental you still have to know the fundamentals of handicapping, right? You still have to have that foundation. Now, maybe the newer generation coming up are only using computer programs, and maybe they don't necessarily have to have that foundation. But I know I need it, and you use it, and you have supplemental things that help you formulate, confirm your opinion, or maybe think about moving in a different direction. So, well, let's go ahead and let's get right to it. You want to talk about a couple of races. You got some doubles going, and then you have an exact in the nightcap we'll talk about. So race 2, $30,000 non-winners of 3 lifetime conditional claiming event, fillies and mares, 5.5 furlongs on the main track. Morning line favorite, number 6, Dial Friend at 6-5. This horse has a lot of speed, but she clearly has some physical issues, so it is a little concerning that she's going from 2 higher quality races, including a stakes race, to a 30K tag. Now, for most trainers, that would be a huge red flag for me. But for a guy like Peter Miller, maybe not so much. He puts the horses where they can win. First of all, talk us through the race. And then secondly, why did you choose this race and decide to start here as a leaping point for your day forward?
Yeah, so the thing that's important to understand about the Del Mar Fall Meet, this Bing Crosby meet, it's a lot different than the summer. I don't want to say that it's not as competitive, but we do have smaller fields. And so you do have to take a little bit more of what the odds board is giving you, as opposed to having a plethora of full fields where there are a lot of different ranges of price options to select from throughout the course of the day. The reason I chose this race specifically to start the betting strategy is because
Nope. It wouldn't be an episode of Best Bet without a little bit of a technical glitch. It looks like Tyler froze. Let's see. There, you're back. You're back.
Yeah. So I think where I left off was that the reason for the strategy here was I want to get to a couple of price options in race 3. And so my thought process is I want to roll doubles. I want to try to get alive to my price horses, and then I want to roll doubles that start with my price horses to the 4th race. This second race, to me, I don't see anything all that complicated with it. It looks like it's a pretty formful race. I think the morning line is probably pretty accurate. Frank, you and I can disagree a little bit on what we consider our old school handicapping the biggest drop in racing. Some would consider it's the straight maiden to the maiden claiming ranks. I would argue the starter allowance to the N2L or N3L is at least equitable from a class drop standpoint. The outside runner, Dial a Friend, is the most likely horse to clear this field. I think that she's, she'll be in front. There's a good probability that she ends up going wire to wire in this race. She'll be a short price. With that said, yes, I'm concerned, obviously, that our last 2 efforts, albeit on the grass, and the fact that they're not even strung together, there's quite a big layoff gap between the two, and another gap till today. There are some red flags there. But on her best day, she is the most likely winner to go wire to wire in the race. But because of the concerns, perhaps with some of her physical limitations, that is the reason why I also used the one Dr. Ray D for trainer Steve Knapp off the claim. He's a trainer who's very, very good off the claim rather. This is a runner I think is going to sit right in behind the projected speed of the race. I can't see her sitting worse than 3rd on the rail here. If the 6 does falter, I think she is the one picking up the pieces. And to be honest, she'll be the better value in the double anyway. So for me, I'm probably going to play an equitable denomination from a double standpoint, meaning that I'll play both the 1 and the 6 equally. They'll probably both be like $10 doubles for me, maybe 20 depending on the will pays. But I'll just try to get through this leg and stay alive to the 2 price options I like in race 3.
Yeah, when you sent me your bets, it was very evident to me that race 3 is kind of the key to your day. You got 2 price horses in there, and you want to get alive to them to pay out, and then start a double with them. Roll it through because they're price horses. Most likely winners in the previous race, most likely winners in the after race. So let us talk about race 3. I put the double up that you want to play. Obviously, the 1 and 3 are your horses. It's a $40,000 optional claiming, non-winners of 1 for fillies and mares, 5 furlongs on turf. Rails are at 18 feet. Morning line favorite is number 6, Queen Maxima at 2-1. And you will notice that she is not on Tyler's double ticket. She just ran 2nd in a downhill stakes race at Santa Anita. She does have a win over this course, but this is the first time she's facing older winners. And I thought this was a pretty competitive field. Like I said, I think this is the key to your day. You have some price horses in here, and if you can cash with them in the double, you're looking pretty good, the rest of the day. But tell us how you came up with these horses.
Yeah, so this race, the first thing I thought of was that this race screams a price. That this is where you have one of the few opportunities on this card that I thought is a wide open competitive field where I didn't think that any of the favorites had a distinct advantage. I had big holes that I could poke in all of them. There were a couple of ways that I was approaching this race. The first is obviously analyzing the pace, and it certainly looks like the 5 Dancing Soul. She's probably the speed of the speed, at least appears to be on paper. But for a much cheaper level. I mean, her wins are for 25, 62.5, 32,000. This is a big step up to the non-winners and one other than condition for her.
I agree,
and again, she's the type of runner that if you can at least stay with her or perhaps even head her early, she'll probably quit in this field. And the horse that is able to grab the lead from her probably has a pretty distinct advantage. The rail runner in her report for trainer Richard Mandela, second off the layoff, is a runner that really piqued my interest for a couple of different reasons. I think she is very, very quick, and I could see her taking the lead in this race. Again, this is one of those calls where you either look like a genius or you look like a knucklehead, depending on how this one runs. But if you bear with me on the thought process for this particular runner, the debut effort that she had at Santa Anita way back in 2023, that 21.2, 43.4 speed,
blazing,
really, really, really fast for Santa Anita.
Blazing speed, yeah.
That will translate at 5 furlongs. She is naturally very, very quick out of the gate. The other thing that I thought watching her replays is that she has kind of a distinct turfy action to her. Okay. And again, this kind of fits back with the Wayne the Brain thought process here. The workout report, this one said something that I thought was very, very interesting, that this one they think will appreciate the surface change. So now I have 2 different notes, one of my own and one from an expert who's, an expert clocker that's suggesting the same thing. They think that this surface switch is a good thing. If this filly can break from the rail and she can head the number 5 early on, this could be a huge, huge price turning for home that all of a sudden has 2 lengths on the field and they're trying to run down. Everyone's going, what happened? I like the natural progression second off the layup. I just think horses typically improve. Yeah. The last time, I don't care that she finished last and faded by 11. That really means nothing to me. To me, that was just a comeback effort to make sure she still had her speed. I think this was a target spot for her. And I think this is one they're trying to put over. So I had to include her in the double. The other runner I'm looking at is the number 3 Diamond Bar Gal, who is kind of going to have a little bit of a converse trip. She, I think, sits the patented pocket rail trip at Del Mar, which is always a good one at 5 furlongs in the turf. Now, again, her knock is all of her races are state bred, and today is open company. There's no doubt that's a big move up in class. But with that said, you're getting the value to compensate that kind of call. She's going to be sitting the right type of trip. We know she likes the Del Mar turf course. She's 2 out of 4 in the third. She's the right price on the board. And again, I think that the way that this race sets up and the way that we're looking at the favorites, who I don't think are all that much classier, I don't think this is as drastic a step up as it would be if we had some horses that were dropping down from the $80 or $100,000 non-winners one or small stakes race were dropping back in to this lower class level. So I think that it's a lot more evenly matched field that I'm calculating that this jump up in class isn't quite that big of a deal.
Right.
So I'm hoping we're either looking for perhaps a wire-to-wire effort out of the rail runner, or if that doesn't work out or gets cooked on the front end, whatever, we have another runner who's going to be sitting a good trip that's going to benefit from the pace meltdown that potentially could happen here. And perhaps we can complete a nice little double here to start our day.
Yeah, you have to go back a long time. You could pretty much toss Calabrese against open company and turf races back in the day. The distinction is not that great anymore. Same thing with claiming races. There's not that big of a difference now between a 16 and a 20, where back in the day, class meant something back in the day when it came to those jumps. So I agree with you. Calabrese can compete, and that horse is sharp. That horse loves Del Mar. So here we are, the middle leg in the sequence. You got 2 horses, very likely winners, coming into your price horses in this leg. Connect there, and then right away you want to start another double going forward. We don't have to get too much into detail in race 4 because I think it's pretty straightforward. You've got the top 2 choices in here, and those horses are number 2 got them at 8-5, and number 6 Let Me In, and one of those 2 should probably win this race.
And that's basically it. It's the same logic as race 2. We're basically thinking that the board is probably right here. The morning line's pretty accurate. Got him, caught him. The blinkers on is probably what this runner needs. Obviously, you can throw out the race last time on Breeders' Cup weekend. That was obviously they took a shot and it didn't work. Now they're dropped back into the maiden ranks. Obviously, Val's had a tough year overall, but he does hit the board. He catches
Yeah,
a pretty
he can
weak field.
train.
There's nothing in here. And then the outside runner for trainer Mark Latt. I mean, let's be honest, Mark Latt right now is on a heater. I don't know that there's any two trainers on him and Rick Dutcher that are any hotter right now in the country. Everything he's got is firing. I think this weekend alone, he's got 4 winners in a second. Actually, 4 winners in a second and a 30. He did lose a photo in the nightcap yesterday, which is one of the rare photos he's lost this meet. So I think those 2 runners are pretty solid here. So we're able to bring our prices home in race 3. I think we'll hit both sides of the double here.
And race 4, I believe, is also the start of the pick 6, right? So you can be pretty skinny in that leg moving forward. We're going to bookend the pick 6. Race 4 we just talked about. Now we're going to go to race 9. But before we do, I just wanted to post this up and show you, Tyler, how much people out there really appreciate what you're doing. And it's inspiring. He's right. Mike Brunell, that's the hit we all play for. That's what keeps us going back to the track.
No, I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you so much. It's very, very kind of you. And I couldn't agree more.
He might not be saying that after today, but at least the sentiment,
it is a what have you done for me lately business.
Exactly. You're only as good as your last winner.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to race 9. It's a $50,000 optional claimer, $50,000 starter allowance, contested at 8.5 furlongs on the turf. Morning line favorite is number 9, Rastaman Vibe at 3-1. I'm going to be honest with you, Tyler. I have a very complicated relationship with this horse. I have bet this horse many, many times, and I've been burned, but he always fires. He just finished 3rd at this level last time. He made a nice late run like he usually does. He had no pace to close into, yet he still managed to pass horses. There's going to be a pace to run at today. I did this race for the Del Mar website, so if anyone is interested in my analysis, please go to dmtc.com to see who I like. I do a horse-by-horse analysis. While I do believe Rossman Vibe has an absolutely big shot, I thought this was a really wide-open race. I was sniffing around for some prices, but you have an opinion here, so let's talk about it.
Yeah, this is a little bit more of a field call for this time of the year at Del Mar.
Okay.
I don't have statistics or any proof. This is just experience and feel. The Del Mar meet in the fall, the Ben Crosby meet, seems to favor horses that are either perennial maidens or perennial 2nd and 3rd place finishers. They find their luck this time of year. And Rastaman Vibe is the perfect type of runner. He obviously comes up very strong on a couple programs, on the program that I use. Handicapping wise, he fits his speed figures. He's always there. He likes the Del Mar, turf course. If you notice, his 1 win did come this time of year. It was December 3rd of last year. So it's the right time of year for him. I don't love him by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that he is logical and he is going to be there. Now, the reason that the bet that I'm going to give out is crafted the way that it is because I think he is 1st or 2nd. And I feel pretty strongly about that. And I like 2 prices around him. So what the bet is called a key exacta box, meaning that one horse is keyed or surrounded by a couple of different runners. Right. So with that said, the 2 price runners I came up in this race are the number 5 one-time mark for the red hot trainer Mark Latt, because
there he is again.
But I like the fact this one finally found the winner's circle last time. I think that this one is probably going to sit a very good forwardly placed trip. It could either be on the front end or it could be just off like it was last time. Regardless, I thought that the 10-1 morning line with the runner was going to be forwardly placed. And regardless, it's going to have first run turning for home. It is a good thing. And somebody that fits very well, assuming that the 9 runs the same race that he always does. And then the other runner that I was looking at was Presider, the number 10, coming off of a long layoff on the barn switch to Tim Yakteen. This is one that his PPs are they leave a lot to be desired. It's not pretty, but he does have a couple of good things going for him. Obviously, a very positive workout report. You have to love the fact that Rispoli takes him. That's got to be a sign of confidence.
Yeah, I agree.
His races back east are probably good enough. I mean, traditionally, the kind of the rule of thumb is that the East Coast, turf and synthetic runners compared to West Coast runners, they usually are running at a little bit more of a competitive edge. Not to say this is a step down for him, but I'm not worried about the class being an issue. This is a runner that I has been a little bit of a runoff. And my suspicion is with Rispoli will probably tuck in and make one run today. So again, I think he's a pretty logical runner that is probably going to be running a very similar race to the number 9 Rastaman Vibe, and I could see those 2 running together down the lane. So the way that I would probably bet this race, and again, Will Pays will dictate the denominations that I exactly bet, but for right now, whether you're a small player or a big player, let's say on the smaller side like I am, it's probably a $10 exacta box key, $10 exacta box 5-9, $10 exacta box 9-10. And then depending on what the will pays are, I might press that opinion a little bit more with either the 9 on top. So I might do another $10 exacta with the 9 on top of the 5-10, or I'd come back the other way. Maybe I play $10 heavier exactas with the 5 and the 10 on top of the 9, knowing that the 9 is camera shy.
Right.
It just really depends on how they're betting, how I've done betting throughout the day, what kind of bankroll we're looking at. All of those things will factor into the decision. But the rough draft of the opinion is still the key, that the 9 is probably going to be first or second in this race, and I want to surround him with an exacta hit.
Yeah, the horse fires every time. It's just he will run his race. I also thought Posada was a little interesting. The fact that George Sharp sends his horse to the West Coast. Maybe they're saying let's try firm turf, because we just synthetic. We tried a bunch of different things, and the horse has hinted at ability in some of those races. And Timmy Actine, the job that he and his barn has done with Johannes has been incredible. That is one of my favorite horses in training. I love watching that horse run. When the horse won over the summer, Millie Ball and the Actine were beaming ear to ear, and I walked by them and I said, "Wow, that's a really nice horse." And Tim looked at me and he said, "He's a lot of fun." You got a good horse. It buoys your spirits. It's just an incredible. This is what these horses do for us. Not just on the gambling side for you and me, but the people who take care of these horses. It means a lot to them when their horse shows up and runs well.
Oh, absolutely. And again, Johannes, you cannot understate how well he ran in the Breeders' Cup Mile. I mean, he ran it 5 balls off. I mean, he was a shadow and a whisker away from winning that and being a Breeders' Cup champion, which being a West Coast turf horse, that's almost more impressive than anybody else that won that whole day. So they should be very, very proud of him. And I agree with you. He's a really, really cool horse.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, that wraps up this week's edition of Best Bet. Tyler, thank you so much. I always love talking to you. Always love hearing your thoughts. I love seeing you and your dad at the racetrack. For those who don't know, there is a live bankroll tournament this upcoming weekend at Del Mar. It's a $3,000 buy-in. I might have a shot, because unfortunately for Tyler, he's not unable to play. He's got a prior commitment, so he's not going to be in the field. So I encourage people to sign up. This might be your only chance to win, because Tyler plays a lot of these tournaments. So you're up against one of the best. That's it. Until next Saturday, good luck to us, and let's make some money. Thanks again, everybody, and thank you so much, Tyler.
Thank you, Frank.